Hello and welcome. My name is Kate Merrind. I'm a program manager at the Department of Small and Local Business Development. This session today is a drop-in question and answer session for the CBE Green Grant, which is currently open and will be open through December 2nd, 2022 at 2 p.m. This grant is only for active CBEs. This is not a full information session, though the recorded information session from October 24th is available. I've dropped it in the chat, and if you came a little bit later, I will drop it in the chat again, just so you can get a hold of all of that information. Let me tell you a little bit about how today is going to work. So because we've already done the full information session, we will share those relevant links. Today, we're just here to answer questions. This session will be recorded. This session will be posted into the Zoom Grants library. If this is the first time you're joining us, Zoom Grants is the application system for this grant. In order to get to that Zoom Grants link, you'll need to go to the request for applications. I'll describe the official instructions for the grant. I am dropping that in the chat again. That is available on the DSLBD website. So if you have questions about the grant, you can, we'll start by having people add them to the chat. And depending on how many people are on the line, we may be able to also have folks come off of mute. We do have information available from the slide deck if we need to demo anything, and I can also demo things within Zoom Grant, the application system. Outside of these sessions, we are going to ask that people email us at inno.ed@dc.gov. And so just to get us started, we have gotten a few questions in by email, and so I'm going to cover what those are now. But please, if you have questions on this grant, start dropping them into the chat so we can start addressing them. Just to let you know the questions that we've received so far, and it's only been a few via email. The first question is, how do we apply? Okay, so the folks are saying the recorded link isn't working. I will bring that back up in a second. How do we apply? So if you are not seeing an online form or portal link, the answer to that is the application link is in the CBE Green Grant request for applications. The request for applications are the official instructions of everything about eligibility and how to apply, and it is specifically on page 3 of that document, which I've just dropped in the chat again. Another question we have received, can a joint proposal be submitted? The answer to that question is at this time, there is no specific restriction in the CBE Green Grant regarding joint proposals. I will state that this grant is only eligible for CBEs. And then the last question is, where can I find a copy of the information recording? So looks like it's, let me go ahead and pull that. It is on the DSLBD YouTube. So you may not be able to see me going there, but I'll go grab that and drop it back into the chat. See, we do have a number of folks on the line, so please feel free to start asking questions. All questions are fair.
Hi, thanks so much for taking time to answer our questions today. The question I have is in relation to the marketing portion of it. How much total funding is available under marketing? Is it a total of $25,000 or is it $75,000 across like the 3 different areas?
Yeah, so the grant is broken into 3 different areas that you can apply for funding for, and you can apply for each of them. Okay. And I'll pull that up on as well. Here's the recording link. About it. But let me go pull that up and this and get there. Answer your question. All right. So DSLBD has a total of $250,000 to award. We are planning to make, that's on this previous slide, we're planning to make between 4 and 8 grants for a mix of support from the $250,000 available. Applicants can apply for up to $25,000 for a market study. So that's separate from the marketing. So a market study would be looking at what are the CBE opportunities in the green economy, both related to building energy benchmarking, solar, building maintenance upgrades, both here from local opportunities, but also as we look federally and as we look nationally. And so what is that full set of potentials? Marketing, that is up to $25,000 to specifically market small, resident-owned or disadvantaged CBEs to prime contractors in the green infrastructure space, but also to market opportunities that prime contractors have to CBEs. And lastly, to also to market DCSEU's Train Green program. Train Green is it's a collection of different certifications that CBE staff and DC residents are available for to skill up and get certifications in the relevant areas related to a lot of the infrastructure projects that are coming forward. And then, go ahead.
Got it. So those three separate opportunities of up to 25,000, or is it?
Yeah, so you could apply for up to a total of 100,000 if you applied for all three, or you could apply for just one of them, because the last one is here on the screen is up to $50,000 for back office services. And just for folks who are on the line, back office services is fairly broadly defined in this grant. We defined it more narrowly in the grant that we ran last year, and that was narrowly defined to areas like accounting, legal, and proposal development. Those are still on the table, but we also know that there are a number of different ways that CBEs might see back office that would be supportive for CBEs to be able to get into these types of contracting opportunities.
And then for the marketing one, the one up to 25,000, do you have to include all three of those areas in the proposal? Can you like just choose like one? So if I just said I just wanted to do like the small resident-owned disadvantaged CDEs, marketing them to like prime contractors, can the proposal focus on that, or does it need to focus on all the other two as well?
So I don't think we have a restriction. I'm going to jump through a little bit this slide deck to the scoring criteria. So read through the RA. We do provide both what the questions are that we ask for you to answer to us, but we also are providing the scoring criteria that review panelists will look at when looking at your proposal. And so what you'll want to think about for anyone who's proposing anything is how will your answers line up to this scoring criteria? Because this is a competitive grant.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Question. Mm-hmm. My name is Daniel Covington. I was wondering, so I know you can apply for all categories, so a total of 100,000. How does that affect your scoring? Let's say you don't do well in the marketing area, but the back office service proposal is stronger. Like, how do you guys filter or I guess reduce the amount of funds that you're going to award? So if I apply for all 100,000, could I get 50,000 and that portion is taken or evaluated separately than the other 25 categories, or kind of just can you?
Yeah, so it will not be evaluated separately. However, one of the narrative questions, and it's on this screen here, in section B of the narrative questions, number 10, if awarded a lesser amount than requested, please share what portions of your proposal you would prefer to be funded and why. And so a way to think about this is your entire application will receive a score. And within that, there can be specific recommendations from the reviewers, this portion, not that portion, but you will have an entire score and it will be looking across sort of what the top scores are for the applications. So that's something to take into your strategy as you think about it.
Okay, one more question. So past performance, is there a certain past performance that's considered better than others? So whereas let's say I've had a prime contract with DC before, but I've also had subcontracts like supporting small business programs. Would a prime contract be evaluated stronger than the subcontracts, and then also like versus commercial experience? So I'm asking which ones should be prioritized and which ones I utilize as the past performance.
Yeah. So that is a very good question. I can partially answer that question because that is part of the competitiveness of your grant. And so part of that grant application. So some of that will be based on how reviewers read this section of questions, and I'll show you the scoring criteria in a moment. We are not requiring that that folks have past performance specifically in green and sustainable infrastructure, but they will be scoring your application based on the expertise that you have in the area of performance that you're looking to put forward. So if you're good at doing market studies and you've done many market studies, you would demonstrate that. If you are good at doing accounting, then you would demonstrate that. And then you would explain how that relates to this area of procurement and how you would sort of, if it's a new content area, how you will approach adapting that experience to this project. But let's jump over and look at the scoring. All right. So it is a 20 points question. This is the top question that's right here. Do the providers have past performance in the area of support proposed? So they should have demonstrated experience in the area of support they're proposing. So again, it does not have to be on green and sustainable infrastructure and procurement, but it should be in the type of work that you are proposing to do,
And
which
then
can be different.
and then like was the customer who has been provided to matter at all, or I guess that's just up in the air for.
It's part of the competitive proposal, so I can't answer how. I can show you what the reviewers will see to look at, but I can't say at this time what reviewers might find stronger. My recommendation to everyone would be to put their strongest experience forward.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yep. I see that Pascale, if I'm saying your name correctly, has raised your hand if you'd like to ask a question. And apologies if I didn't.
Yeah, how do you get a copy of the document that you have right now?
Yep, I'm gonna go. It is. I'll pull it and drop it into the chat again, but it is also available. It is available in the library of the system. It is also available in our away message if you email us at NOED. But the chat is right there. So this is the slide deck. And the slide deck can be useful, but I'm going to suggest that even more useful than the slide deck is specifically the request for applications, the RFA. I'm dropping that link in now. The RFA is the official instructions on the grant. The slide deck is taking a lot of content from the RFA. The RFA is available on DSLBD's website under current grant opportunities and on the CBE green page and in the link that I just dropped in the chat now.
Okay, great.
Mm-hmm. Are there other questions that folks have?
Yes. Hi, good morning. How are you? Question just on the 3 different elements, specific the back office support. I just had a question in terms of, and I think it was, and I'm trying to remember from the RFA, I think it was up to 100 small businesses. I'm just going off of memory. I'm just curious to what extent, how will it be determined if the CBE has the capacity for being able to manage those 100 small businesses? And I hope I'm not speaking out of step. I'm just trying to reflect from what I read a few weeks ago.
Yeah. So I would say within that, you can propose what number of CBEs that you would be able to support in the types of services that you're offering. And so that's something that you would describe. And then within that, if you are applying, if you were looking to say, how can I support it? Part of that comes in your project plan, and some of that comes in the description of your past performance. And so it's sort of it's a total assessment that comes through from the strength of your proposal. But a lot of it will probably be in this section, which is the proposal realistic in the timelines and the expenditures and the goals? And so it's across these questions that you would explain how you have the ability to do what it is that you're proposing to do.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Please feel free if there are additional questions. I don't know if I see any hands raised, but please feel free.
Oh, hi, my name is Casey Ransford. I'm with PBJ Marketing. My question is kind of in a similar vein here. But if we were focusing on the marketing bucket, is the expectation that we would use the grant funding to provide services to specific companies? Or could we spread it, across the collective as a whole, I guess is what I'm saying, and promote the use of CBEs in general?
I think that could be part of the competitive grant. I'm going to go look at I want to look at the scoring criteria as I answered that so that I answer you most accurately. The purpose of the overall grant is to support building up CBEs into green energy related contracts. And so there should be a focus on that area overall. Because you're going to see the scoring criteria. Will it provide critical support to CBEs in building up and pursuing green energy related contracts? So you want to be able to answer that and do well on that question. And then looking at scoring question D, are the proposed supports targeted to help CBEs achieve access and success in the green economy? And will the project increase access to opportunity for small resident-owned and disadvantaged CBEs? And so I think within that, it comes back to being part of your competitive proposal, whether you are looking at individual specific CBEs who are that are pursuing this, or if you're looking at the broader space. And I would just assess those scoring questions to see if you feel like you are hitting towards what those are asking for.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's kind of up to us as far as how we think it could be best suited. So off of that, when will we be made aware of who is applying to receive the support from us, or anybody who is awarded?
So the projected timelines on this grant, and projected timelines can change just so that everyone has that understanding. But we anticipate making award announcements for this grant in January of 2023. Which would mean that we would be looking at hopefully start dates and grant agreement dates in February of 2023. You can propose any timeline within there for what you would be doing under the grant. But depending on the timeline that you proposed, if you are awarded, DSLBD will work with you throughout that timeline to help route CBEs who have expressed interest in those particular services to you.
Okay, perfect. And obviously, one last question. I'll let everyone else get their time here. But how are we supposed to track the usage of the money so that because there's a good list of what you can and cannot do.
Yep.
Is there a way we're expected to track the money we use?
Yes, that's a great question. It's not necessarily outlined in the RFA, but I am going to go and it might be outlined in the RFA, but I'm going to go and get the allowed and disallowed cost use. So you'll see what he was referring to are these two sections of the RFA, allowable uses and disallowed uses. So on every grant with DSLBD, you are required to do regular reporting. And by the end of the grant, you must do final reporting, which includes expenditure reporting. That expenditure reporting needs to account for every dollar under the grant, and it needs to show proof of payment made. So we need to see the actual either if it's staff time, then we need to see timesheets and the fact that staff were paid, or if it is something that you have purchased, we need to be able to see a receipt or a bank note saying that that was actually paid. That is both for our accountability purposes, but that is also in order to protect grantees in the case of an audit. If grant funds are not spent appropriately, they must either be returned or you could face other penalties in the future, particularly if there was an audit.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Deja, I think I see that your hand is raised again.
Yeah, I think it's a follow-up question to what was just mentioned. Obviously, in addition to the funds that will be awarded, does DSLBD provide any infrastructure for as the CBE is managing multiple grantees? And I think as the question made, like, how are we tracking it? Because certainly as CBEs, we all have different business process systems. So does DSLBD have a unified, because you'll receive it in different modalities. Like some folks might track it in their CRM, some might track it Excel. So I just wanted to get to that because I don't know if I saw that specificity in the RFA.
Yeah, so what we will do in the grant agreement for anyone who is awarded is we will have standard requirements for reporting, which we may additionally enhance with anything specific that you have mentioned on reporting. I'm looking for a certain question that has something about, my apologies, I'm looking through some stuff on the screen. So you'll see in question E, it says, tell us why this proposal will support equitable access to sustainable market opportunities. But the additional question there is how, what are the reporting and metrics you will track for outcomes and lessons learned? And so we will have some basic requests that go in every grant agreement, but then we will look at what your proposal is for tracking that information. We will probably require to know which CBEs, if you work with individual CBEs that you supported. But part of the strength of your application is describing what that tracking mechanism is and how you will report it.
Okay, gotcha. That makes sense. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Please feel free if you have a question to either drop it in the chat or feel free to come off of mute. While we're waiting, I'll go find some of the important deadlines and just remind folks of those.
Can you hear me?
Can now.
Yeah. Okay. So a couple of questions. Is this open to non-CBEs or only to CBEs?
This is only available to CBEs. Now, the CBE can have any sub-designations. A lot of CBE programs and services that you'll see require CBEs to be small. We do not require the small sub-designation in order to apply for this grant, but the services provided under this grant by whomever is awarded must go to small, resident-owned and or disadvantaged CBEs.
Okay, so in the past, I've gone to your CBE list and I've contacted companies because they've been CBEs, and I've either not gotten a response from them, or they've told me, well, we're already too busy. And so I'm looking across at the people at this call, and I'm like, if we want to connect with CBEs, these are the CBEs that we should be connecting with, because they're clearly in the same position as us and interested in this program. How do I find out who's on this call and who's the bucket of CBEs that are interested in this program?
So overall, CBE Green, not necessarily the CBE Green grant, we have been developing an interest list, and we ran this grant last year, and there were 3 services that were offered under it. We didn't have any of the marketing pieces, but we had accounting, proposal development, and legal services. And so we put out information to the entire CBE pool, and those who were interested let us know, and then we made direct referrals to the service providers. So we would likely look to do something similar when we look at who is awarded under this grant and getting them connected to CBEs who are interested in receiving the services provided under this grant.
Okay, but while we're making the proposal, like for example, Casey, it would make my proposal stronger if I said, hey, I'm using Casey as my marketing contact. How do I get those connections? How do I make those connections?
At this point, we do not have a public list because we haven't engaged CBEs asking them if they're willing to be engaged. It is an interesting and good point. And I think it's one for us to think about as we continue to build up the CBE Green program, thinking about how to do more networking across CBEs who are involved. It's a good point, and thank you for raising it. But we don't have anything available at this time.
Okay.
Deja, I think I see your hand again.
Yeah, I think that made me think of another question. So certainly the deadline is, December 2nd, but for those CBEs that are not going to apply for this grant, but want to receive the infrastructure support, like what is the mechanism for them to be, once you award whoever the CBEs are going to be, out, say the terms administrators, but how does that network or that dynamic unfold?
Yeah. So we have a current list of folks who both expressed interest in the direct services last year, but also click through spot in Canva. We do have a link where folks can just sign up for the overall program and saying that they're interested in learning more, and we'll continue to put out both the general and the specific. We do know that some CBEs have either blocked the general email or don't necessarily see the email when it comes out, but the primary way in which we will do that, this is the CBE Green sign up page. I will copy it, put in. But within that, we will continue to do outreach, letting folks know.
It doesn't look like you qualify.
Sorry, was that another question, or was that someone chatting in the background?
So just to make sure I'm clear, the link that you'll provide in the chat, like if we're not looking to be the service provider, but the beneficiary of the services, a CBE could sign up on the link that you'll send. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Apologies, I've been trying to. Right here, but I'm having trouble copying. There.
So as you're copying that, just a follow-up question, similar as you mentioned in February of 23, the CBEs that have been awarded as the service providers will be, communicated with. Is it the reverse of those CBEs that want to receive services? When will they be notified that they are going to be a beneficiary and they'll be able to receive said services?
So that timeline will be dependent on the actual services that are proposed and accepted and when they're ready to start. So at this time, I do not know if it will be one singular outreach or if it will be individual outreach. To give you an example, for last year, we did do outreach to all eligible CBEs together with a combined expression of interest form, but then we did individual information sessions with each of the awarded service providers so that people could learn more about that service before deciding if they wanted to take advantage of it. In addition, there are DCSEU constantly, that's Train Green, I'll go back to that, that people can follow up directly with DCSEU on that are eligible, that are available at all times. So I'll go back to that. All right. So this is a little bit of information about some of the webinars that we have done with either DCSEU or the Department of Energy and the Environment. These are also available on the CBE Green webpage on DSLBD's website. The first two are by DOE, and they describe sort of the major legislation and activity that's happening that drives a lot of this work. There's more to it, but in brief, in 2018, DC passed the Climate Omnibus Act, which required all buildings in the District of Columbia over a certain size to have energy benchmarking done. And so there's a description of energy benchmarking. That benchmarking then has to comply with the building energy performance standards. And so that is described. And that is a lot of work and then making sure that the buildings are compliant, and if they're not compliant, how do they come up to speed? The last one is a session that we did with DCSEU, the DC Sustainable Energy Utility, which we've done frequently, about the Train Green program, in which they have career pathways and they have a number of different certification programs that are open. And it is good if you are interested, or if you're interested in having your staff be trained in any one of a number of different areas, to sign up for that now and continue to monitor what trainings are coming available. And if you are looking for a specific training, to inform DCSEU of that interest.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. And this receiving the services is pro bono for the CBEs, like they're not having to pay a fee for that.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
And I think to add to the answer to that, one of the questions in the competitive application is, what is the benefit of people receiving that service? Were people facing barriers to receiving that service in the private market, and being able to describe the overall value? All right, someone has asked for a link to these videos. I am going to leave Canva for a moment. I'm not sure if the screen will come down, but I'm going to go grab it off the DSLBD website, because it's on the CBE Green page. In general, videos for DSLBD are up on our YouTube, but there are a lot of videos there. So we have taken those videos and made them available on the CBE Green page. And they are all available right there. And if folks have additional questions, definitely feel free to jump in with them.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
I have a question about the back office services. I heard you kind of indicate last year that it was centered more around the accounting and finance, and this year it's a little more broad. Is there, I mean, even this one sentence is still very broad and vague. Is there any more details around like what what subcategories would fall under this, so that way in presenting the proposal, we have like a little bit more specificity around the areas
Mhm.
that fall under that bucket? Thanks.
Yeah, I don't think we do not have a lot more specificity, in part because we do know that there are we saw a lot of really great proposals that had a variety of things within them. And so it is actually very open for what back
Okay.
office services can be.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, just to get one final like clarification on the back office services. It's just essentially anything that is not spelled out between the market research and the marketing activity. That's essentially what you're looking at.
Yeah, let me make sure we don't have anything further. I'm going to go to the direct RFA and see. I think we might describe it to the exact language. Direct back office support and training are key building blocks to prepare CBE businesses for participation in market opportunities. Let's see. So we're considering that, which you'll see here, business operations.
Perfect. Thank you.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So the back office services, does that include training courses? Like, for example, if I want to put somebody through a commercial building auditing training course and learn how to do BEPS, does that include the cost of the course and the time spent training?
So it definitely can include training. The one thing I would suggest as you think about that specific example is this DCSEU does provide a lot of training on Train Green, and so you'd want to be able to describe why this was different
Okay.
than something that was already currently being provided.
Okay, so but they had, for example, one course on multifamily last year, and I got two of my people in that course. One of them moved on to bigger and better things, and I'm not sure when that course is going to open up again, but I'm increasing my capacity of people doing audits, and I would like them to get the multifamily course. So then would I need to wait until the DCSEU provides the course again? Or could I say, you know, I've got time in December to train two people or in February to train two people, here's the cost of the course?
So I think I would encourage you to closely read the scoring criteria. One important piece to understand about the scoring criteria and how this all works, I will not be scoring any applications. And so, you know, what is written on the page for the scoring criteria, it's just sort of I would look at that very closely and see if just sort of an average reviewer would read that into business operations. You are welcome to propose it. I cannot say either way how well that would score.
Okay. Second question, I seem to be lots of questions. Can you ask for less than the $25,000? Can I say I need $7,000 for marketing?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great.
One thing, let me see, I'm going to see if I can get back to the deadlines. I'm going to talk a little bit about these early deadlines. We've missed one of them already because that was on Friday. There is one more courtesy eligibility review deadline. It is something that we offer and we do encourage people to consider to take advantage of. There are a lot of eligibility requirements for all district government grants, but it is important to know that if you have a mistake in your eligibility, you will not have your application scored. And so you'll want to make sure that everything in the eligibility section is good to go, that all of the addresses align. In the information session, I do explain directly what we review and how we review it for eligibility. But if you would like to have your eligibility information pre-reviewed before the deadline. The next courtesy eligibility review deadline is November 18th at 2 p.m. So if you have submitted your application by that time, you can continue to work on your competitive application. We won't look at that portion of it, the scoring, the application questions, but we will review everything in eligibility, and we will let you know before the final deadline if there are any corrections that are needed to be made, so that you're not preparing a whole grant application and then not having your application scored because of a mistake on eligibility.
Okay.
So that's a courtesy, but we do encourage it.
And then for that, I'm assuming, do you have to like raise your hand and say, hey, I submitted my application, can you review this, or does it happen automatically?
So if Zoom grants will have a notification to us that something has been submitted. So what we will do is after November 18th at 2 p.m., we will look at all applications that are submitted, and we'll get back to you the next week on any corrections that need to be made, or we'll let you know if we didn't see any corrections.
Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. One thing I will mention, we're not going through Zoom grants. If you haven't gotten into Zoom grants yet, it is a third-party application system. If you are having any difficulties with Zoom grants, there is a technical email. This is just to, like, if you're having problems with your login or something doesn't seem to be saving. They usually answer things, I think, from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern. I think they're in Mountain Time. But it is useful. If you do need to reach out to Zoom grants, you can feel free to copy us on that. And if we can be helpful, we will. They can't answer any questions about the substance of the grant, but if you are having any issues with the technical system, 2 quick suggestions on the technical system. If you are logged in for a long time, you may want to log out and log back in. It will auto save, but the longer you're logged in, the more you'll get a lag in the system. We do have in the information session information about how to create and log in, and one of the most important things is to remember to actually click submit. If you are having troubles when you click submit, it will tell you what errors are in the application. One of the most common errors that people have is that they have been copying and pasting information in from a word processor, which is usually a good grant practice so that you don't lose anything, but some special characters will save in grants. So if you're having troubles, it may be a special character like a bullet or something similar. So that's just something to keep an eye out for. It's a good reason to submit early, just so that you don't run into any issues. But to go back through these deadlines, the final deadline for submitting the grant is December 2nd at 2 p.m. Eastern, not 2 p.m. in 1 second. It's literally 2 p.m. And so don't miss that. Get it in early. We do anticipate making awards in January 2023. The period of performance, that's when you will actually do activity under the grant if awarded, and when you can have costs is whatever date we sign a final grant agreement with you through September, I'm sorry, that should say 30th, 2023. And the final report is typically due 30 days afterwards. That information will be outlined in the grant agreement itself. These are all the legal disclaimers at the end of the RFA. This is our question policy. We will have more of these drop-in Q&A sessions. We do have a final questions deadline, which is November 30th at 2 p.m. You can submit a question by email after that, but what we don't do is we can't guarantee a response by the final deadline. If we get a lot of questions in, we may not be able to answer it. We'll try. But even after that final questions deadline at 3 p.m. that day, we do have a last drop-in Q&A session in case you don't get your question in by email. And while we wait, if there are any other questions, I will just say some of the things that we're super excited about with this grant. There are a lot of partners who make grants possible. This funding comes from the Department of Energy and the Environment. We are working closely with the DC Sustainable Energy Utility, who has a lot of the prime contracts related to this. We have a lot of partners in government who make grants possible, and we're really excited about these grants in particular because this is for CBEs only, because we know the strength of the CBE community. And this is a great way for us to highlight it, but also to be able to further build the CBE community of CBEs supporting CBEs. We're really excited about it. Are there additional questions?
I do. I mean, since we have time, I'll just, you have not because you asked not. I'm just curious, and I understand your level of, diplomacy, maybe not answering it, but it's just interesting being able to distinguish if you're a CBE that wants to receive the services or a CBE to provide the services. And I'm just wondering, like, the level of readiness of how we can determine, which position we're in.
So the services that will be provided under this grant may be it may be fairly different than where the grant is pointed at towards what it's supposed to support. So I'll go back to that a little bit. I think there are folks who have expressed interest in providing the services who I think did then take advantage of the services last year. So you can do both. It doesn't have to be one or the other because we hope to have several back office services. The grant is really focused on providing services that help people get into these markets. It may or may not be that the service providers themselves who provide back office services want to be in these markets. They may or may not. Sort of depends on what your business is. And I think this is also part of a learning experience for us, for a lot of about the old market. It's one of the reasons that we're asking for a market study because there is so much available, but it's taking a little bit of time, I think, to really learn and understand the deep level of opportunities that exist within the green and sustainable infrastructure space. There was a session that the DC Procurement Technical Assistance Center, DCPTAC, did. It was May 4th. It was during Small Business Week. It was a rally. But they looked at this industry and said it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. As we look at the years that are coming forward. And so this grant is really about supporting CBEs into contract opportunities with DCSEU, but also similar opportunities. And so within that, DCSEU has a number of different contracts that are available. I'll come back over here under Procure Green. So these are the multiple scopes of work that are currently available under Procure Green, and you can find it on their website. And so these are, and I don't describe them very well. They're, highly technical work, whether it's HVAC, whether it's the retrofit accelerator, and the grant itself is supporting back office. So, it may be a question that someone has the technical skill to do this work, but they need additional business operations support so that they can manage the contract for doing the work. And so that's sort of how it partially teases out. I know this is a really long answer to your question. I apologize about that. But I think we're also all in a learning mode about where the full set of potential of this goes. One of the sessions that is available on DSLBD's YouTube, provided by one of our back office service providers in the fiscal year 22 grants, they did a look at the federal infrastructure bill. It was a legal services team, and they talked in depth about the federal opportunities that are available as people continue to skill up into these spaces.
That's very helpful. Thank you for that. It doesn't have to be a dichotomy either or. I think that's really helpful, and that we may have the technical expertise, and I think that was the impetus for my question of, but also not having maybe all of the robust, human resources to fulfill it. And that's kind of where I'm vacillating. But it sounds like that shouldn't be a deterrent in applying for this per se.
Yeah. And I think one of the things to always think about when applying for grants, lots of people apply for grants and, sort of you want to look at the cost opportunity of your time. Sometimes it's valuable to apply for a grant that you didn't get because you've done the research and the structure, and you may be able to take the proposal that you had for a grant and find another way to find funding for it if you're like, yeah, that was a really good idea and I think it should happen, or it should happen differently. Now, it may also be that you're busy and it's not worth your time because some other opportunity is more worth your time, and only you can assess that. But sometimes a grant opportunity does give you some space for potential future planning. Somebody asked how many applicants were in the last round. I believe it was, and I'm pausing because I might be off by one. I believe we received 24 applications. We were able to fund 3. We received a lot of really good applications. So one of the other things to know with grants is you may have a really good proposal, and there's only so much funding to go around. And so we recognize the strength of the CBE community, and are excited to be able to share, to the world just how strong the CBE community is. Even if we aren't able to fund everyone, it has additional value.
And was just a follow up to the question, and was the funding parameters similar last round?
It was similar. I think you should still be able to find the RFA, but if not, it was. I think it was $200,000. It could have been 250. I think it was $200,000. But within that, we only looked at back office services. We did allow a little bit more flexibility, but we put a focus on accounting, legal services, and proposal development, and that's what was funded. There was a little bit more available under each one. Now we're looking to do between 4 and 8, so we brought the cost down a little bit for what the back office service could be. But so it's similarly shaped, but a little differently shaped, and we've added the marketing components this time and a little bit more funding.
What type of legal services were being funded? Do you know?
It was specifically a review of sample contracts. If you had a contract that you were looking at doing with DCSEU or similar, you could get direct support on reviewing and understanding that contract. Or if you wanted to just kind of do a basic contract overview, what is often involved in the types of contracts that are here, they got a sample from DCSEU. There's actually a public webinar up on our DSLBD YouTube. We want to make sure it was available to all CBEs to just kind of walk through the types of things that you could and should assess as you're looking at a contract like this. I think it's still very valuable and would highly recommend folks check that out on our YouTube.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
One more question. While I'm at it, what kind of accounting services did they offer? Was it like audits, or did they? Do you know?
That was strategic accounting services and or QuickBooks preparation. And so strategic accounting is sort of how to do an assessment of your overall accounting strategy and think about ways to grow that are specific to you. And so there were both generalized trainings and then individual one-on-one support.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
I am sorry I was late, but I had a meeting that ran way over.
No worries.
And I was wanting to make sure that this presentation was going to be available someplace online or would be sent to participants.
Yeah, so the specific recording from today will be uploaded to DSLBD's YouTube. It will be included in the library on Zoom grants, and I will email it to all registrants for today's session, probably to all registrants for any of the information sessions, because I don't know if there's a way for me to separate that out. But in addition, the actual slide deck, I have dropped it into the chat, but it is also available in the it's available in the Zoom grants library. It's also available if you email us at InnoEd, you'll get an away message. Because the slide deck that we're looking through right now is the information session slide deck. This is a Q&A session, so I have it available to answer questions, but we did do a full information session in which I walked through every slide in the slide deck and talked about it on October 24th. That is also available in those spaces if you want to just sort of see the full presentation.
Thank you.
Mhm. We've got about 10 minutes left. Are there additional questions? Then waiting for additional questions. I'll just go through the slide deck a little bit and see if there's anything that we just haven't touched on. So one piece that we do recommend for all CBEs is to make sure that you are a client of the DC Procurement Technical Assistance Center, or PTAC. They are housed here at DSLBD. They're a federal center funded out of the Department of Defense, and they work on procurement readiness and support. And they've been taking a close look at specifically DCSEU, but also this market overall. So if you are not a PTAC client, or you haven't connected with your PTAC counselor recently, we definitely recommend getting in touch. This is just a copy of the Train Green website that is available on DCSEU's website. You can see that there's a program access form, which is sort of like an expression of interest form. And so it is recommended if you are interested in getting into some of the Train Green opportunities to complete that program access form. Those are the videos again. Once again, this is the request for applications. This is the full information. This is the full official instructions on the grant itself. We're going to send you the link to this to download. We won't attach it. If at any point we need to make an edit, we found something that's wrong, we haven't found anything like that yet, what we will do is we will repost a copy. We'll put an indication of the new updated date and what was changed, and we'll typically reach out to anyone we've had any contact with on the grant to be like, hey, we've updated it. Hopefully that does not need to happen. So there will be a couple more drop-in Q&A sessions. I'm going to navigate away. That is all in the Eventbrite that Deets had. So I'm just going to go look at those really quickly so that I can share that to you. But please feel free to ask a question if you have it while I'm doing that.
I guess as we're waiting, do you have just a high level overview of just the forecast for even 23, some upcoming grants that may be similar to this structure that are really built to amplify CBEs?
All forecasted grants from district government for businesses that are specific for business development are on the obviously DC's website. I can pull that. I don't know if we will have I'm not aware at this time of other CBE capacity building grants. That doesn't mean that it won't happen later, but I'm not aware of any at this moment. Super excited to be able to do this, to prove this case, and to be able to make the argument that, doing this more and in more context would be awesome. So the next information sessions are Monday, November 21st at 3 p.m. And then again, there's one right towards the end of the deadline, November 30th at 3 p.m. Let me go find that Obviously DC's link. One thing I will say, I don't know if Obviously DC really ends up having a lot of the Department of Energy and the Environment grants. It is saying if you are interested in the sustainability space, that I'd suggest that you look at the Department of Energy and Environment grants website directly. A lot of their grants, and I don't know them intimately, but a lot of their grants are available to both nonprofits and for-profits. But there is just a general large amount of funding in the sustainability space. And highly recommend that you just take a look at the DOE grants page and keep an eye on that. One thing that we do talk to people in just sort of general grant settings about sometimes, even when grants are available to nonprofits, sometimes there's a good reason for nonprofits to subcontract. And so, depending on what your skill sets are and what your interests are, you may be able to work with a nonprofit who's applying for a grant as the named subcontractor. This is the DOE grants page, and they have a grants training, which I've heard is very good. Got about 5 minutes left if there are other questions. Otherwise, one thing I will just mention, it is in the information session, but I do recommend that you look up your CBE number in the active search portal right now. Sometimes if you get additional designations, your CBE number will update. We will do our best because we are DSLBD to make sure that we're able to find you. But we did find in the last round of the grant that a lot of people had their CBE numbers wrong, which could really impact you if you're applying somewhere else. So we just highly recommend that you just check your active status in all the databases. We've also seen, so this is the active CBE database. You should be able to look it up, make sure everything looks correct, make sure you're still active, make sure you will remain active through the grant period. It is no longer DCRA. It is now the Department of Licensing and Consumer Protection. This is all the information about how we will look at your business license. It needs to be up to date and things need to match. So it's good to check that and make sure. Some folks have run into some database errors sort of this summer. So you want to make sure there aren't any database errors there.
Oh, it's too fast.
Too fast?
Yeah, go back.
Okay. So was it this one?
But not yet.
Okay. So this is DLCP. I'm going to learn that because I want to say DCRA, but this is DLCP's Scout system. And you can search, anybody in the public can search the address, name, or there's something, or the business license number for any general business license. And so what we will typically do is we will take your business license number, we will put it into this system, we will make sure that the business license is still active and that the address matches the addresses that you're telling us. We saw some folks this summer there were some database errors on DCRA's part. We caught that in the pre-eligibility review, so they were able to have it corrected.
Okay.
So that's important. I can't answer the question that came in the chat of when DCRA's website will migrate to DLCP. I know that there is a large process. If you are not aware, DCRA October 1st became two separate agencies, the Department of Buildings and the Department of Licensing and Consumer Protection. I know they are going through a change process as they work through that, trying to make sure that everything is continuing to work. And we are in touch with some folks at DLCP to sort of continue the business support that they've been doing right along. For a few types of businesses, you may have alternative licensure. And so if you have any questions about that, you can let us know. But if we can't search you in the Scout database, we'll probably need an actual copy of the license. One thing I will say in our last couple of minutes left, and then see if there are any final questions. If you have not downloaded a Clean Hands document recently, my suggestion, if you are applying for this grant, the first thing that you should do right after this information session is go to mytax.dc.gov and download your Clean Hands document. We do find that even if folks don't owe money, there have been a lot of paperwork challenges that people have had that can take a long time to resolve. So if you need to resolve an issue with your Clean Hands, you will want to start on that immediately. And it's a general recommendation. We were recommending every 90 days. We are in grant season. We're recommending that you download your new Clean Hands document every 30 days because it is a status that is not static. And so different Clean Hands documents of different dates are required for different opportunities. And so just keep a real close eye on it. Any last questions? Well, with that, I want to thank everyone for sticking with me for the full hour and having some great questions. I hope this was helpful. I am going to drop in the chat again. It is available in the RFA, but if you have questions outside of these sessions, please email inno.ed@dc.gov.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.